My name is Ashley, and at 27, I found myself navigating the dynamics of a family business intertwined with marriage. Growing up, I was the sole focus of my calm, skeptical father and my vivacious, spirited mother. Their union was a harmonious blend of energies, though mom's exuberance could sometimes be overwhelming. When I married son, whom I met through a friend, I hoped for a marriage akin to the vibrant one my parents shared. Son's family owned a renowned French restaurant chain in New York City, contrasting with my family's more modest ventures in the food industry. While dating, son's tales of restaurant life and ambitions were captivating. However, after marriage, I grew weary of the constant comparisons between our family businesses. The discrepancy in our family's businesses became a sore point. Son's family's restaurant empire seemed to overshadow our modest endeavors. Arguments ensued, with son and his family viewing their success as solely their own achievement, ignoring the significant contributions of Todd, son's cousin, who had been taken in by their family after being orphaned. Todd, often referred to as a brother by son but treated more like a servant, played a crucial role in the success of the family business. Yet he was overlooked and underappreciated. My mother-in-law, burdened by the knowledge of Todd's situation, expressed her concerns to me, unable to openly confront her husband and son. Despite their essential roles in the business, Todd and my mother-in-law remained humble and kind. Todd's competence and my mother-in-law's wisdom were evident, yet they were forced to operate under the shadow of son's incompetence and his father's arrogance. Son's ineptitude in managing the business contrasted sharply with Todd's skillful handling of day-to-day operations. Employees respected Todd, often resisting son's unreasonable demands. Behind the scenes, Todd and my mother-in-law worked tirelessly to salvage the business while, during a visit to my hometown, I found myself sharing my marital woes with my parents over a comforting bowl of potato soup. My mother, sipping her soup with gusto, didn't mince words. "Ashley, just get a divorce and come home." My father, though wearing a bitter smile at her bluntness, remained silent. It was too soon to entertain the idea of divorce. After all, we hadn't even been married for 6 months. Disappointed in both Judson, my husband, and my father-in-law, I found solace in the kindness of my mother-in-law and Todd. "I can't just easily get a divorce," I replied with a wry smile, knowing the complexities of my situation. But my mother, undeterred, suggested I leave Judson and join them at their pizza shop. I protested vehemently, while my father, ever the gentle soul, inquired about my troubles. As I poured out my frustrations about Judson's dismissive attitude towards me and his unwarranted suspicions of my relationship with Todd, my mother-in-law shared some revealing insights. She recounted a past incident where Judson, driven by his insecurity and rivalry with Todd, unjustly fired a female employee who had garnered Todd's admiration. My mother's animated nature, a trait she had carried since childhood, provided a welcome distraction from my troubles. I reminisced about how her vivacious personality had initially intimidated potential suitors until my father, drawn to her energy, had become her steadfast partner. Their love story, peppered with anecdotes of youthful charm, lifted my spirits. As we sat together, conversing warmly, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos of my marriage. My parents' unwavering support and my mother's infectious spirit reminded me that, despite the challenges, there was still light to be found in the darkness. I recalled an important matter and asked if I could bring Judson, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and Todd to my parents' home. It would be their first visit to my childhood home, and my mother-in-law eagerly expressed her desire to reconnect with my parents. Judson reluctantly agreed, and to my surprise, Todd, showing interest in making pizza, volunteered to join us. I suspected he wanted to ensure Judson behaved himself. My parents gladly agreed, excited to showcase the deliciousness of our pizzas. Mom, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic, exclaimed, "Of course. We'll make them realize how delicious our pizza is." I chuckled, knowing her excitement could sometimes be overwhelming. So we found ourselves at my parents' pizza shop, unaware of the brewing tension ahead. Todd, usually the peacemaker, was ready for any storm that Judson might brew. The moment Judson laid eyes on the quaint pizza shop, he couldn't help but sneer. "Still as old-fashioned as ever," he remarked, fortunate that my mother wasn't there to hear his comment. Knowing her fiery spirit, she might have banned him from the shop on the spot. Ignoring his snide remark, I led everyone inside. Mom greeted them cheerfully, welcoming them warmly. "Long time no see, Judson. Ashley has told me a lot about you, she said, her words laced with sarcasm that Judson seemed to miss entirely, much to Todd's subtle amusement. As Mom continued with her warm greetings, she turned to Todd, remarking on his appearance. "You're Todd, right? So tall and handsome. You look like a model," she exclaimed, overwhelming Todd, who offered a puzzled smile in response. Politely, he thanked her and joined the rest of the group. Meanwhile, Dad was busy preparing pizzas while Mom attempted to serve some drinks and popular side dishes. Judson, however, couldn't resist making a disparaging remark, commenting on the shop's appearance. "Build the store on your mother's old and dirty," he scoffed, displaying his usual lack of tact. My emotions churned with a mix of anger and apprehension as I watched my mother prepare drinks right in front of me. I couldn't bring myself to meet her gaze, so consumed was I by fear. Then, amidst the tension, a menacing voice sliced through the air, demanding a repetition of an earlier remark. My usually cheerful mother's tone dripped with quiet fury, sending shivers down my spine. Despite attempts from my mother-in-law and Todd to intervene, my father-in-law brazenly echoed his disrespectful sentiment, deeming both the shop and its proprietor unfit, even suggesting the risk of food poisoning. My mother, seething with rage, abandoned the drinks and retrieved a 1-liter bottle of wine, her demeanor sharp as she confronted my father-in-law, warning him of dire consequences if he continued his insults. Startled by her forcefulness, he attempted one last jab at her appearance before my mother, fueled by indignation, made a move to retaliate. With a swift intervention from my father, disaster was narrowly averted, but the damage had been done. My father-in-law and Judson, sneering in disdain, exited the shop, leaving a cloud of tension in their wake. Despite my mother's impulse to pursue them, my father and I held her back, struggling to contain her fury. Amidst the chaos, my mother-in-law and Todd offered profuse apologies, though I knew the fault lay not with them but with the condescending attitudes of my father-in-law and Judson. Their callous remarks had ignited the conflict, leaving me seething with anger and hurt. Recognizing my turmoil, my mother-in-law addressed me, expressing regret and suggesting divorce as a viable option for my well-being. Todd, in his quiet manner, echoed her sentiment, recognizing the pattern of such incidents. As I wrestled with conflicting emotions, torn between loyalty to my family and the turmoil within my marriage, the regretful expressions on my mother-in-law and Todd's faces mirrored my own internal struggle. Contemplating divorce, I couldn't shake the guilt I felt for my mother-in-law and Todd. As my father and I struggled with what to do next, my mother cut through the tension with her blunt observation. "You two don't seem happy, especially Todd. You can leave whenever you want, right?" Her direct question caught Todd off guard. He confessed his concern for his aunt, unable to abandon her despite his disdain for my father-in-law and Judson. It was his loyalty to my mother-in-law and his sense of duty toward the other employees that held him back. My mother-in-law, overwhelmed by Todd's true feelings, broke down in tears, burdened by guilt for holding him back. Feeling lost, my father and I exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to proceed. But then, my mother's cheerful laughter cut through the tension. "Ha, that's easy. Leave it to me," she declared, surprising us all. With newfound determination, I made up my mind. After discussing our plans for the future, I returned home to face Judson. Straightforwardly, I announced my decision to sever ties with his family, unable to forgive my father-in-law's hurtful words. Judson's scornful laughter in response only fueled my resolve. I handed him the divorce papers I had prepared, issuing a final warning. "Don't come crying to me after our divorce," I cautioned, but Judson, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation, remained indifferent. As our marriage dissolved, my mother-in-law and Todd were spared from the ordeal. Though my life was fraught with stress, exacerbated by my father-in-law's insensitivity, I found solace in the freedom of my newfound independence after the divorce. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him. revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned a French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled. Realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company, it became clear why they had been relegated to running the pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees. While seemingly running the pizza shop, my parents were actually overseeing their work, earning the admiration of their staff. Under my mother's guidance, our company took control of the restaurant previously managed by my ex-father-in-law and Judson. The once complacent duo now stood stunned as my father calmly addressed them. "It's evident to me that both of you lack the necessary skills to manage your business," he declared, citing concerns voiced by employees regarding their management abilities. With a firm stance beside my father, my mother delivered a decisive message. "We're entrusting the management of the French restaurant to Todd. He has full authority over you both," she proclaimed. Ex-father-in-law and Judson protested, claiming their approval was needed, but their objections fell on deaf ears. This decision wasn't solely my parents' but also reflected the sentiments of the disgruntled employees. Now, my ex-mother-in-law would support Todd, her nephew, in a supervisory role. Todd and my ex-mother-in-law shared a glance, and with calm determination, Todd expressed his gratitude for their support before revealing his true feelings. "While I owe you for taking me in as a child," Todd began, his voice turning icy, "my grudge against Judson is immeasurable. For him, it's even greater." His declaration left no room for forgiveness or mercy, stripping my ex-father-in-law and Judson of all managerial authority. Todd's cold resolve was clear. Then my ex-mother-in-law delivered a final blow, leaving my ex-father-in-law and Judson reeling. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him, revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned the French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled, realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company. It became clear why they had been relegated to running a pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees.